The Garden of the Gods is a geologically unique landscape that inspires people to look at the Earth differently. Long before the science of geology could explain the forces of compression, erosion, and faulting, people were drawn to the upended towers of rock. For the last 3,800 years, nomads have frequented the garden for its protection from the elements and its significance to traditional rituals.
We discovered several hearths or fire features here in the garden. The University of Colorado at Colorado Springs conducted a field school here and excavated a number of those fire features, and we learned quite a bit from them. The earliest one gave us that date of 3,800 years ago. It's the earliest evidence we have for human occupation in the garden. But we have fire pits, several of them, ranging up to about 1,400 years ago.
Various native Indian tribes who migrated through the area for centuries regarded the garden area as mythical and communal.
There's many things that have drawn people here to Garden of the Gods. For example, the Ute Indians camped here for many generations, and they came because of Camp Creek, which is on the east side of the valley, and of course that provided water for them, and there was grass for their horses there, ample wildlife and useful plants for them. They came in the wintertime when it was less severe, a little bit more sheltered climate here than it would be up in the mountains.
All of the people that lived here prior to American settlement were nomadic. They would travel through the Garden of the Gods, up into the mountains, chasing game, down across the plains. Some of the traditional territories of American Indian people would overlap right here. And so Garden of the Gods really became a cultural crossroads where various people would interact, would meet, would have to learn how to live with each other. And really that role of Garden of the Gods in this immediate area being a cultural crossroads is something that is a key theme for our entire history.
The cultural exchange continued in the Garden of the Gods when the American settlement brought explorers, trappers, and traders to marvel at the unusual rock formations that defied explanation. With the discovery of gold in Colorado, settlement was well underway, and the Garden of the Gods was named in 1859 by Rufus B. Cable, a surveyor for the newly formed Colorado City. He and a friend were marveling at the landforms when his friend suggested that the area would be suitable for a beer garden. Cable exclaimed that it was a garden fit for the gods, so the Garden of the Gods is what the area was called, as mining for gold surged in nearby Cripple Creek.
Colorado mining has no direct impact on this immediate region until the discovery of gold in Cripple Creek in the 1890s. Cripple Creek became famous worldwide. It was really the last gold rush in Colorado. It was a vast gold field. While it became famous, much of the wealth produced by Cripple Creek, though, flowed downhill into Colorado Springs.
Colorado Springs was a young town that boasted an established tourist business which included the Garden of the Gods. The view of the Front Range attracted a population of wealthy citizenry to Colorado Springs, which included William Jackson Palmer, a railroad man who founded Colorado Springs in 1871. Palmer was captivated by the beauty and uniqueness of the Garden of the Gods. He convinced his friend, Charles Eliot Perkins, to purchase the tract of land that comprises the majority of the park today. As his daughter recalls, his donation was an admirable act of generosity.
After my father's death, a little message was found scribbled on the back of an envelope, saying he hoped that his children would feel like giving the Garden of the Gods to Colorado. We, his children, were applauded, but it was really his wish and plan, and we merely carried out his wishes.
Even as the park was being admired and preserved, the forces of nature that had created the unique landscapes were just beginning to be understood by modern theories of geology, starting with the theory of plate tectonics.
Plate tectonics is the current paradigm in geology in which we believe the Earth is made of about half a dozen major thin plates. And these plates move from the centers of oceans until they collide with each other, where one plate will then dive under the other.
Where the modern Rockies stand today, plate tectonic movement caused buckling in the Earth's crust that created the ancestral Rockies about 300 million years ago. The ancestral Rockies were the first of 3 mountain building events in the region. Even as this first set of mountains rose, they were being eroded by water and ice, relentlessly breaking boulders into smaller and smaller rocks.
As the mountains eroded, streams carried materials down to the edges and piled them up in large alluvial fans. These alluvial fans are what comprise the Fountain Formation, the red rocks on the west half of the Garden of the Gods as we see it today.
Each episode of erosion that followed laid down a new horizontal layer of sediment in sequence, stacked one atop the other, with the oldest layer of rocks, the Fountain Formation, situated on the west side of the garden.
At the Garden of the Gods, there are many different rock layers. They date back almost 500 million years, and the most young rock layers are about 70 million years old.
Wind erosion over the sediments of the ancestral Rockies caused particles to break down further into sand, which then collected into sand dunes. The fine sand grains were layered over the Fountain Formation and compressed into sandstone under the accumulating weight.
These sand dunes, when turned into rocks, become the large hogbacks in the center of the Garden of the Gods. These are the Lions Formation. As the mountains wear down, the seas begin to return. We come into what's known as the Mesozoic era. This is the age of dinosaurs. And during the Mesozoic era, shallow seas will cover the Garden of the Gods again, and in fact much of Colorado and North America.
After the Lion sandstone was laid down, a great shallow inland sea intermittently spanned the area from the Arctic Ocean to the Gulf of Mexico, and it was ripe with life.
The seas were in here where the dinosaurs tromped around in the Morrison Formation, Jurassic period, and during the Cretaceous time, shallow seas in which sharks and ammonoids and clams lived moved in and out of Colorado.
Colorado is paleontology heaven. This whole state is composed of layers of rock that were deposited over the last 500 million years. And those layers are the remains of ancient landscapes that were buried sequentially.
In fact, the Garden of the Gods has its own unique dinosaur, discovered in 1878 by James Kerr, a professor from the Colorado College.
A visiting scholar from Yale named James Kerr was working at Colorado College, and he started exploring the Garden of the Gods. The one really significant fossil was a single skull, and we noticed something that was kind of odd. It didn't look like a Camptosaurus skull. It looked like something else. It's in fact a new, undescribed species of dinosaurs, and he's called it Theophytalia kerri. Now, Theophytalia is Greek for Garden of the Gods. And Kerr is the species name, that's for James Kerr, who found it. So it makes it much more appropriate to the place. It's actually a unique dinosaur. Camptosaurus is known from a lot of places. Theophytalia is known only from the Garden of the Gods.
But Colorado's unique geological progression did not stop for the dinosaurs. Plate tectonic movement caused the formation of the second set of Rocky Mountains, the Laramide Rockies, or Rocky II.
As these plates collided, the continent began to crumple, and that crumpling reached inland to what is now Colorado. As it reached Colorado, the rocks bent and folded, and in some places they began to break. It's break that creates the Garden of the Gods and the spectacular geology that we have here.
As the broken layers of sedimentary rock received pressure, they upended to their vertical and sometimes over-vertical orientation that you see now. Over millions of years, faulting through the garden accommodated the dramatic movement of the sheets of rock from below the surface.
The same layers of rock that are exposed here as uplifted fins are a flat line beneath the city of Colorado Springs. They're down 2 miles deep, so you can't get to them. But here you can get to them.
It took an enormous amount of time to move these rocks into their current positions. This was not one single large earthquake event, but rather, if you look closely at the White Lion sandstone, you can see many little cracks, little fractures, each of which is a fault. And these cross each other and offset each other and tell the story of how these rocks were jostled, fault after fault after fault, until they reach the vertical position that we see them today.
After the Laramide Rockies eroded, the modern Rockies rose in their place from heat and pressure slowly over time. In the Garden of the Gods, erosion continued performing its unending task of chiseling away the softer rock to expose the strata that we see.
The modern Rockies developed along the same faults that occurred during the ancestral Rockies and the Laramide Rockies. As erosion took material off the top of the Laramide Rockies, it removed weight from the Rockies, and in response to that, the mountains were able to rise again into the position they have today.
Although the modern Rocky Mountains and the Garden of the Gods took millions of years to form, appreciation of their matchless beauty endures universally through time.
What I've learned about the prehistory of the Garden of the Gods has given me a greater appreciation of the park, a sense of connection with the people who were here in the past, those who came before us, and were impressed by the same majesty and grandeur of this park. And I feel I can share that with them, and I can share it with the people who will be visiting the park in the future.
Garden of the Gods was actually deeded to the city of Colorado Springs in December of 1909 as something of a grand Christmas gift. And one of the conditions of that gift was that it be forever free to all the people of the world. So essentially, he gave the park to us to care for. And if we consider it the very precious gift that it is, then I know that the park can be preserved.
And while the elemental geological forces that formed the Garden of the Gods have understandable scientific explanations, the marvel of nature's power still inspires the same sentiments that Catherine Lee Bates so beautifully expressed. As a visiting professor to the Colorado College, the view from the top of Pikes Peak compelled her to write America the Beautiful.